The BFG, Chapter 8, Snozzcumbers. But if you don't eat people like all the others, Sophie said, then what do you live on? That is squelching quite a tricky problem round here, the BFG answered. In this slosh-flunking giant country, happy eats like pineapples and pigwinkles is simply not growing. Nothing is growing except for the one extremely icky-poo vegetable. It is called Snozzcumber. A Snozzcumber, cried Sophie. There is no such thing. The BFG looked at Sophie and smiled, showing about 20 of his square white teeth. Yesterday, he said, we was not believing in giants, was we? Today, we is not believing in Snozzcumbers. Just because we happen to not have actually seen something with our own two little winkles, we think it is not existing. What about, for instance, the great squizzy Scotch hopper? I beg your pardon, Sophie said. And the humplecrimp. What's that? Sophie said. And the raps rascal. The what? Sophie said. And the crimpscottle. Are they animals? Sophie asked. They is common animals, said the BFG said the BFG. I is not a very know-all giant myself, but it seems to me that you is an absolutely know-nothing human being. Your brain is full of rotten wool. You mean cotton wool, Sophie said. What I mean and what I say is two different things, the BFG announced rather grandly. I will now show you a Snozzcumber. The BFG flung open a massive cupboard and took out the weirdest-looking thing Sophie had ever seen. It was about half as long, again, as an ordinary man, but much thicker, and it was thicker around the girth as a perambulator. It was black with white stripes along its length, and it was covered with all kinds of coarse knobbles. Here is the repulsant Snozzcumber, cried the BFG, waving it about. I squoggle it. I despise it. I dispunge it. But because I am referring to gobble it up human beings like other giants, I must spend my life guzzling up icky-poo Snozzcumbers instead. If I don't, I will be nothing but skin and groans. You mean skin and bones, Sophie said. I know it is bones, the BFG said, but please understand that I cannot be helping it if I sometimes is saying a little squiggly. I is trying my very best all the time. The BFG looked suddenly so forlorn that Sophie got quite upset. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to be rude. There was never any schools to teach me talking in giant country, the BFG said sadly. But couldn't your mother have taught you? Sophie asked. My mother, cried the BFG. Giants don't have mothers. Surely you was knowing that. I did not know that, Sophie said. Whoever heard of a woman giant? Shouted the BFG, waving the Snozzcumber around his head like a lasso. There never was a woman giant, and there never will be one. Giants is always men. Sophie felt herself getting a little muddled. In that case, she said, how were you born? Giants isn't born, the BFG answered. Giants appears, and that's all there is to it. They simply appears, the same way as the sun and the stars. And when did you appear? Sophie asked. Now how on earth could I be knowing a thing like that? Said the BFG. It was so long ago I couldn't count. You mean you don't even know how old you are? No giant is knowing that, the BFG said. All I is knowing about myself is that I is very old, very, very old and crumply, perhaps as old as the earth. What happened when a giant dies? Sophie asked. Giants is never dying, the BFG answered. Sometimes and quite suddenly a giant is disappearing and no one is ever knowing where he goes. But mostly on giants is going on and on like whiffsy-whiff time twiddlers. The BFG is still holding the awesome Snozzcumber in his right hand, and now he put it onto one end of his mouth and took a huge hunk of it. He started crunching it up, and the noise he made was like the crunching of lumps of ice. It's filthing, he spluttered, speaking with his mouth full and spraying large pieces of Snozzcumber like bullets in Sophie's direction. Sophie hopped around on the table, ducking out of the way. It's mysterious, the BFG gurgled. It's stickable. It's rotsome. It's maggot-wise. Try it yourself. It's Falsum Snozzcumber. No, thank you, Sophie said, backing away. It's all you're going to be guzzling around here from now on, so you might as well get used to it, said the BFG. Go on, you snipsy little winkle. Have a go. Sophie took a small nibble. Ugh, she sputtered. Oh, no. Oh, gosh. Oh, help. She spat it out quickly. It tastes of frog skins, she gasped, and rotten fish. Worse than that, cried the BFG, roaring with laughter. To me, it is tasting of clock croaches and slime wagglers. Do we really have to eat it? Sophie said. You do, unless you is wanting to become so thin you'll be disappearing into a thick ear. Into thin air, Sophie said. A thick ear is something quite different. Once again, the sad, winsome look came into the BFG's eyes. Words, he said. Oh, is such a twitch-tickling problem to me all my life. So you must simply try to be patient and stop squibbling. As I am telling you before, I know exactly what words I am wanting to say. But somehow or another, they is always getting squiddled around. That happens to everyone, Sophie said. Not like it happens to me, the BFG said. I is speaking the most terrible Wigglish. You think you speak I think you speak beautifully, Sophie said. You do? Cried the BFG, suddenly brightening. You really do? Simply beautifully, Sophie repeated. Well, that is the nicest present anybody is ever giving me in my whole life, cried the BFG. Are you sure you is not twiddling my leg? Of course not, Sophie said. I just love the way you talk. How wonder-crump, cried the BFG, still beaming. How whoopsie splunklers, how absolutely squiffling. I is all of a stutter. Listen, Sophie said, we don't have time to eat Snozzcumbers. In the fields around our village, there are all sorts of lovely vegetables, like cauliflower and carrots. Why don't you get some of those next time you're visiting? The BFG raised his head proudly in the air. I is a very honorable giant, he said. I would rather be chewing up rotten Snozzcumbers than snitching things from other people. You stole me, Sophie said. I did not steal you very much, said the BFG, smiling gently. After all, you is only a tiny little girl.